Prophet David, or Dawood, is recognized in Islam as a prophet, messenger, Rasul, and lawgiver of God, and as a righteous king of the United Kingdom of Israel, which itself is a holy country in Islam. He similarly figures prominently in the Torah and the Old Testament of the Christian Bible. David is perhaps most famous in Islam for defeating the Philistine giant Goliath, Jalut, when he was a soldier in the army of King Saul's, Talut. His genealogy goes back through Judah, the son of prophet Jacob, Ya'qub, to prophet Abraham, Ibrahim. The figure of Prophet David is of extreme importance in Islam because he was one of the few prophets to receive a named revealed book. It says in the Quran that the Zabur, the biblical Psalms, were given to David. David's son, Prophet Suleiman, took over the task of prophecy after his death, and he was made the subsequent king of Israel. The Judeo-Christian and Islamic views of David, however, differ in some aspects. Muslims generally do not accept the sins of adultery and murder attributed to David in the Hebrew Bible, as they feel that prophets, in their belief the utmost chosen and elect of God, would never commit such grave crimes. Prophet Solomon or Suleiman was, according to the Quran, a king of ancient. Long before his prophethood and before the Psalms were revealed, in roughly 1010 BCE, David was the younger brother of 3 men who went to war against the Philistines. At a time in the war when King Saul appeared to be leading the losing side, it was young David that turned the tide. The Quran tells us that among the army were many people who had lost their faith in God. He, God, tests them by the banks of a river, and David is amongst the very few who prove to God that their belief is strong and unwavering. When they return to the battle, David kills Goliath. The Quran does not give details of the incident, however the biblical texts say that David used his slingshot to kill the giant man. Islamic scholars tell us that biblical stories that do not contradict or go against the Quran may indeed be true because the Torah was a revealed message from God that only became corrupted over time. David was an unimportant person in the community. He was with the army only to keep his father informed of the fate of his brothers. Suddenly overnight he was thrust into an exalted position. The people expected David to be the successor of King Saul, and King Saul married David to his daughter. It is at this time that David is given the gift of prophethood. After killing Goliath, David did not brag about his newfound fame and position. Rather, he went into the desert, where he glorified God, singing his praises and contemplating his favors. God made the mountains and the birds sing with David in the afternoons and in the mornings. David was grateful and humble, and God granted him this miracle. He could not only sing with the birds and mountains, but he could also understand the languages of the birds and beasts. David was very pious. He divided his day into 4 parts. In one he earned his own living and rested, in another he listened to the complaints of his people, in the third he preached sermons, and the final part he spent time praising God and praying. Prophet Muhammad used David's story and lifestyle to help the believers understand the nature of piety, repentance, and submission to the will of God.